Bobby Bhatia. I spent 25 years in private equity running AIG and JP Morgan's partners in Asia. I got involved with technology about 14, 15 years ago. I've also been involved with a number of angel networks over the last 10 years, and I've seen, these networks actually grow, progress, and actually add to the community and the ecosystem. I was actually this morning, and spent most of the day this morning till this afternoon at Chitkara University. First and foremost, I was actually so impressed by the level of people and the level of students, because I've been doing this over the last 10 years where I go and speak at various universities, in addition to running my fund and venture building, where I thought was the real opportunity. So, I think Punjab Angels Network, from the sense that I got, I will address it in two aspects. One, from the audience aspect, which I'm guessing, is primarily comprised of investors, and B, from another aspect, of the individuals who are coming here and pitching their business. So I think there's soul searching to be done on both sides of the equation here. So why don't we start with the people who are actually pitching here, right? So one of the things that, we've learned over the years is that when these angel networks start, and obviously, people are a lot more sophisticated in terms of the type of companies they're building and the type of companies they're presenting, one of the questions I always used to ask every entrepreneur, is this an invention or an innovation? Can somebody help me define the difference between invention and innovation? So typically, an invention would be, we created a regular landline phone. We can say, questionably, is it an invention or innovation if we created the mobile phone? Okay? But when it comes to talking about a smartphone, it's actually an innovation. Right? We took something that was an invention plus commercialization that now equals innovation. So I can innovate from a process standpoint. I can innovate from a design concept. I can innovate from a product perspective. Actually, one of the innovations we in India know very well is what I call the frugal innovation, which is jugaad. Jugaad is actually a frugal innovation, because we don't have that much money, and that we want to save the resources. We want to actually, but that type of innovation, while it's been adopted by the likes of GE or Nestle, tends to be very momentary. Tends not to scale too fast. So one of the things that I saw, and it's interesting, so I'll just step back into our region in Singapore and Hong Kong. Singapore, we got the first wave of innovation or venture investing or this kind of angel investing back in 2013, 2014. In the last 6 years or 7 years, that wave came to Indonesia. So, we could actually kind of look, and by the way, that same wave had come to San Francisco about 5, 6 years prior to that. So you could actually see, what was actually transpiring in each of these markets, and then relate the same. So when we looked at Singapore, which I would say started, so they went 2014, 15, somewhere around there. So 2014, 15, they started, and guess what the projects that did really well? The Me Too projects, right? US had Uber, US had Amazon, e-commerce, etc. So as I call it, the first Web 1.0. Let's say Web 1.0 in very simple terms was e-commerce. Web 1.0 gave another sales channel to bricks and mortar companies. Perfect. Web 2.0 as we know it, again putting it very simplistically, let's call Web 2.0 social and advertising. So we started using Facebook, we started using LinkedIn, we started running advertising models, business models, and then Instagram, etc. But guess what that did? It made Facebook and Google money, but it also drove traffic to Web 1.0. and it increased the revenue there. Web 3.0 gets a little tricky because Web 3.0 actually said, forget these guys, we're going to do a distributed ledger, we're going the other way. That's why now I'm coming back to some interesting parallels that I saw of companies that were successful. So Uber was raising a lot of money without going into the business model. But then you had Didi Kuaidi in China, you had Grab in Singapore, you had Gojek in Indonesia, and all of these companies tended to do well because they said, hey, listen, let's ride on a wave. You know what? It's coming back to my original point. I don't need you to invent anything. I need you to innovate. And that's what I'm looking for. As an investor, that is what I'm looking for. Tell me you're taking an existing process, existing business, a product that you're just making better, because now I can actually reference something that's been done before. It's very difficult as a venture capitalist to invest in something that I cannot reference. So the advice I will give today is that, you know what? The American marketing machine is on. And the American marketing machine says artificial intelligence is going to be important. I just met a couple of companies that were presenting earlier, like Credo Hire, etc. And I said, okay, what are you guys doing? So they walked me through. They said, oh, we're using AI, we're using generative AI, we're doing the following thing. You don't need to know AI. You don't need to understand every single aspect of the algorithm. You need to understand what you're going to build, what you're going to adapt that the market needs. That means I can actually charge the customer money for it, which then ultimately brings me to the question I have for you, which I don't need you guys to answer today, because we're at the nascent stage of setting up Punjab Angel Network. And the question for you is, why are you here? What is your motivation to be here? What is your motivation to invest in a highly illiquid format that potentially may, yield you a very interesting return, but not anytime soon? When you start an ecosystem, if you're driven purely by return, you're in the wrong space. Because everything goes through cycles. I'm not saying that there are not going to be some amazing home runs and amazing companies that are going to come out of this. And I think, when it comes to innovation, if we started and look back when the first water mills were started, when the steam happened, when the railroads were built, to the telephones, to the airlines, and blah, 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 what you notice is those cycles of innovation that started with like 60 years are being compressed. So Eric Schumpeter basically looked at this whole thing and said, well, the cycle we were in was basically, it was the innovation of email. That's what started it all. Back in the mid-90s, right? Or 95, 96. I was actually part of the original team at Hotmail. But email was nothing new. It was just not on a web interface. Email existed 20 years before as DARPANET. All the academics and the military were using this DARPANET, which was effectively email, to exchange information. I think what we need to do is be very, very sure, is it something that, it sounds sexy that I'm investing in venture capital? Just because it's venture capital doesn't mean it's going to yield return. The success rates are lower, but what I think what's happening on the cycles is when you start something like a Punjab Angel Network, what used to take 5 or 8 years for a business prospect to mature is maturing a lot faster. And sometimes, one word of advice that I could leave you with today, because I think it's still, to me, what I feel great about, I feel very proud of Punjab, we live in Singapore, but what I feel very good is that people are attempting to create an ecosystem. Be patient. This is not only financially driven at the stage that you're at. It is also driven by you fueling an ecosystem and fueling the next generation of innovation and creating that culture in this city. And I tell you, you create that culture in this city, it's going to pay you multiple fold more than you know. And that evolution is what you have to keep in mind. I know people talk about financial return, but this is not the time and the place to only think about the financial return. I think you're at a cusp of something very interesting. I think technology is very interesting. We're talking about, McKinsey report, and I forget the number of how many $1 trillion AI is going to add. Everything from manufacturing to repair, handling of number of things, to education, to hiring. It's going to actually make a difference. And I would encourage the young entrepreneurs to say, hey, as opposed to creating something new, try to create something that's already, there's a wave already happening here. Try to create something that's already happening, but find a new product market fit that is relevant for the customer. If you own industries, what I would suggest is that if somebody comes in and you can see that application, have that individual say, please do a POC with me. Have your management team evaluate the value of that POC and the effectiveness of that POC, and base your investment decision on that. There are multiple things you guys can do, multiple things, and I thank you so much for giving me the time to have a chance to address you, and thank you very much.